Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're enjoying your lunch. It's delicious and nutritious, but while you continue to eat, we're going to begin our diversity dialogue. So today, we are so pleased to have with us Dana Beckton, Terence Dickenson, and Bob Martz for a Diversity Dialogue panel. Dana Beckton is the Director of Diversity and Inclusion in the Office of Health Equity at Christiana Care Health System. In this role, Dana creates and implements workforce diversity and inclusion strategies to foster a work environment in which staff are treated fairly and respectfully and have equal access to opportunities to learn and grow. Terence Dickenson is a human resources professional with W.L. Gore and Associates, where he leads a diversity mentoring program and develops and implements diversity and inclusion initiatives. Terence believes that serving others is the ultimate act of giving back. And finally, we have Bob Martz, who's a senior resource development consultant at the United Way of Delaware, where he fundraises within the legal community sector, new account development, and the LGBT affinity group. He is a founding board member of Equality Delaware. Thank you, Dana, Terence, and Bob, for taking time out of your incredibly busy schedules to be with us today. Welcome.
Thank you.
And so here's my first question. How did you find yourself leading or serving in diversity and inclusion initiatives at your organization, or did it find you?
I'll go first. So it found me in my organization. Just a quick history. I was born and raised in the Bronx, New York, went to school in Vermont, which is a big difference when you think about the interesting facts. So when I started working for W.L. Gore, I actually was asked to attend an event, and it was the Black Engineer of the Year Awards, and they asked me to attend it. And then 3 days before the event, the person that was leading it actually said, "I can't go, you now need to lead it." And I said, "Oh, okay." And that's how I actually started my career in diversity and inclusion with W.L. Gore. But prior to that, my history had been working in various different organizations in HR. But as I said, going to school in Vermont, that really started my career in diversity and inclusion.
I think similar for me, we found each other. Prior to being at Christiana Care, I was at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and I was a training manager. My new director, who had just been hired to lead our Leadership Institute, was told 2 weeks into the job, by the way, I also need you to be the director of diversity and inclusion. And she came to me and basically said, "I know nothing about this. Can you help me?" And it was interesting because her biggest fear was, she said, "Dana, I am a middle-aged white woman, pretty well off. No one's going to listen to me." And I had to tell her, people don't care what you look like. All they care about are two things. Do you get it, and are you willing to do something about it? Mm-hmm. So through that, she started to ask me to go to and attend meetings, and then she finally realized I had two different jobs. So she asked me, "Do you want to stay training manager, or do you want to be the diversity and inclusion manager?" And I said, "Well, you know what? I have a skill set in both, but I have a passion more so in the other right now." So that's how I got into officially doing D&I work. And then I was there for a couple of years, and then got offered a great opportunity at Christiana Care and became the director at Christiana Care about 3 years ago.
Cool. Bob Martz with the United Way of Delaware, and let me start by saying thank you to those of you who have made a donation to the United Way campaign at Del Tech. And if you have not done so yet, please do this afternoon when you go back to the office. I grew up in one of the upper counties of Delaware, called Montgomery. It's on the other side of Pennsylvania. So I'm not really a Delaware native, although I've been here for 25 years, and I feel like I am a native now. And I guess I was in law school, or maybe shortly after that, I realized that I was gay. When I came to Delaware, I became very active in my church, then very active in AIDS Delaware, then very active. Actually, I met Dr. Brainerd in Governor Minner's office for the first time when we were talking about strategizing to pass House Bill 99, which was the bill that ultimately included sexual orientation in Delaware's non-discrimination laws. So I've been at this for, I guess, about 20-some years. And I've been with the United Way now about 10 years. The last 5 years I have focused on LGBT cultural competency. And on your table, there's a little summary of what the United Way Pride Council has been doing, and I'll try to get back to that as we move along.
All right, thank you, thank you. So now we get into the gritty of things. Can you share with us how the culture of inclusion has evolved within your organizations?
I'll start off with this one. It's interesting. So I'm not a Delawarean either. I actually live in the house I grew up in North Philadelphia. And, you know, North Philadelphia is, we're very, as people say, very abrupt. We're very direct. So I came to nice Delaware, and they didn't know what quite to do with me. So there tends to be a culture around diversity and inclusion, around those things we don't talk about, right? We don't talk about race. We don't talk about religion. We don't talk about those things. So here I come, you know, and all I wanted to do was talk about it. So where we've evolved is that senior leadership is developing a competency around getting comfortable talking about those things that have previously been undiscussable. Those things, when we look at our current climate, when we look at everything that's going on, in the past, when I first got here, no one mentioned it. No one thought about making the connection of how our workforce is being impacted by our current climate. We don't just leave it at the door. So I think the biggest shift I've seen is at a senior leadership level, people being comfortable saying, I'm not comfortable with this, but I acknowledge the fact that we have to talk about it.
If I could, Christiana Care has been named a leader in healthcare equality by the Human Rights Campaign for the last 4 years in a row, and that is just a huge accomplishment.
Excellent. And if I might add, all three of these individuals and their organizations are very involved with Delaware Tech in supporting some of the things that we're doing here, so thank you for that. And to the audience, we want to hear from you as well. If you have any questions, you can begin to think about that. Raise your hand. We have Denise in the back and Tony. Say hello to the people, Denise, in the pink shirt. And Tony, it's just because I took Tony's mic. That's right. All right, so if anybody has any questions, you can raise your hand and Denise will find you because we want to hear your voice as well. All right.
Could I follow up on?
You most certainly can.
On Dana and what the United Way has been doing? I guess it was back in 2011, the United Way decided to form some affinity groups. And in the workplace, they're called employee resource groups. And I was asked if I would lead our LGBT affinity group. And ultimately, I said yes, under the proviso that we really look at what are the needs within the LGBT community and how the United Way might do something rather than start from a fundraising perspective. So we asked ourselves a very basic and very simple question. Were there any gaps around education, income, or health that the United Way might mount an initiative and ultimately fund a program? Pretty simple. We spent a lot of time talking to folks, executive directors of our nonprofit partners, our business partners. We had 3 different focus groups. And ultimately, initially, we came up with 2 things that the United Way might focus on. One was the disparities within the healthcare delivery system as respects to the LGBT community. And the second was the almost total lack of funding and programming for LGBTQ youth in the state of Delaware. We began really with the LGBTQ youth, and I'd like to just tell you about 3 national studies that came out at that particular time. All 3 have been updated since then. But the first was a 10-year study from the Center for Disease Control, 150,000 youth across the nation, including here in Delaware. The bottom line said that gay youth are 64% more at risk for depression, suicide, substance abuse. Not because they're gay, but because of the pressures that us adults put on these kids. 64% more at risk for depression, suicide, substance abuse. The second study came out from the Human Rights Campaign, the world's largest LGBT organization, and they did a study of youth, gay youth versus non-gay youth. The bottom line for that study for me was that 29% of gay youth say they do not have an adult to talk to about personal problems. They do not feel like they can talk to mom and dad. They can't talk to a school teacher, a school counselor, their rabbi, their imam, their pastor, or their priest. So who do they talk to? Another 13-year-old kid who will give them the absolute best advice in the world. Or they'll go on their cell phone and the computer and really get some crappy advice. The third study was the Youth Risk Behavioral Survey, and this is a survey that is administered by the University of Delaware under a CDC contract. 43 states now participate, and it's done in the odd years. And back in 2011, 7.5% of Delaware high school juniors were self-identifying as LGBTQ. In 2015, that jumped to 15%. The 2017 aren't out yet, and the 2017 is the first year the survey asked, do you consider yourself transgender? This will be the first time we're going to get a real hard number on approximately how many transgender individuals we have in Delaware. 13%. We have approximately 130,000 kids in public school in Delaware at any given time. 13% equates to 15,000 LGBT youth in our school system here in Delaware.
Thank you. Thank you. Data is important. It tells a story, and it often calls us to action. Thank you, Bob.
It's always tough to follow up behind Bob. He just has all this data. And so at Gore, we realized that a lot of our efforts was grassroots. And that was the great thing, because associates were able to really create a lot of our diversity initiatives. But what started to happen was the word diversity started becoming diluted and also became negative, especially when you have a high population of white male leaders within the organization, and they started feeling excluded, right? So whether they felt it because it was real or kind of made up in their heads, it was something that we really looked at and said, how do we make it much more inclusive? In fact, we actually have started a network called the White Men Supporting Diversity Network. How provocative is that, right? You know, White Men Supporting Diversity Network, but it was about white males actually having a voice in what we were trying to accomplish. And we have since changed that name to the Ally Network so that it's more inclusive in terms of allies. But the inclusive piece was, we made the D in diversity small and the I in diversity capital I. Really about inclusive behavior, inclusive attitude, inclusiveness in the work that we were really looking to do. I often try to sum things up real simple. When you talk about inclusion, or I love what Ivy had put up on a slide with I think they were M&Ms or jelly beans or something. I put it this way. Diversity is about being asked to go to a party. Inclusion is about being asked to dance. That's pretty deep, isn't it? Dana said, she said I stole that. But think about it. How many of you go to a party and just want to stand there without being asked to dance or get your groove on or whatever you want to call it? So we have to get to a place where diversity actually dictates inclusion. And you have to take action to have an inclusive environment. And we have an inclusive environment that's going to bring forth more diversity. If you don't have an inclusive environment, the numbers by default will go down. Because if I look and I don't see anyone that looks like me, talks like me, acts like me, or we don't have inclusivity, why would I want to come to this school or to this job or to any place? So diversity brings forth inclusion, which means you have to take action, which will bring back more diversity.
Excellent. Terence says we need to get our groove on together more, and we're going to do that, right? Yeah, we're going to get our group on. I want to hear from you guys out there. Does anybody have any questions? All right, we have one right up here.
We're in trouble. She's writing it down.
I know.
We're in trouble, y'all.
But I gotta find it, but I think I know what I'm gonna say anyway. Hi, Denise. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
My name's Janet Abernathy. I'm an education major here at Terry campus. I'm actually almost finished. I've got a 30-year degree. I attend Grand Canyon University online, and I'm going here as a visiting student taking my math class. So I finish that hopefully in spring, and need tutoring, a lot of tutoring for the math. Anyway, this is to Bob. As an education major, just different things I've been looking at and seeing, and I'm not sure exactly, I think it's called gender identity, where students now, we're not really sure what to consider them as, if they're part of the LGBT. Do I want to say group? I'm not sure. Again, I want to use the right, lived in California for 20 years, so you got to use the right terminology. Anyway, I was just wondering, some students don't want to be referred to as he or she. And I'm just saying there's just going to be a whole new slew of things that I know I have to learn, and probably others too. So how do we go about that? Where do I get the information? I don't even know how to learn that. My own personal thing is I would ask the student, what do you want to be considered as, or their parents? But if you would help me further, I'd appreciate it.
Gee, if you have 45 minutes, I'll take you through the workshop that I do with teachers and administrators. Actually, we've had close to 4,000 administrators, teachers, counselors, and behavioral health counselors go through what we call the ABCs of LGBT. And actually, about 6 weeks ago in this very room, I did that workshop for all of the nursing faculty here at Del Tech, which was really exciting for me because we're trying very hard now to get LGBT cultural competency embedded in nursing curriculum here in Delaware. So I'm going to be doing the same presentation to all of the faculty at UD sometime in January. They haven't given me the date. The vocabulary. God, you know, I sit down and every now and then I have to update my slides, and I added 3 new words for the next time I do that particular presentation. Transgender is an umbrella term, and we have actually a parent support group that meets at AI DuPont Hospital monthly, and I helped form that group last year. And the first couple of meetings that I went to, parents would get up and say, I'm Bob, and I am the parent of a transgender boy or a transgender girl. The last meeting I went to, 3 parents in a row, new parents, got up and said, I'm Bob, and I am the parent of a non-binary child. So that was the right term 4 months ago. Gender fluid, gender variant. Help me. Pardon? There you go. There probably will be another term, new term, before I leave today. Don't worry about the term. Mm-hmm. Worry more, and I think you're very right. You asked the right question. Ask the student, what name would you prefer that I use, mm-hmm. and what pronoun? What is your name? What pronoun? In the English language, we do not have a pluperfect. I hate they and them, but sometimes that's what they're going to tell you. Refer to me as they and them. And I'm going, oh crap, how do I do that? Mm-hmm. But that's what they want. So your job is to help these young people. Remember I said that 13% of high school juniors are self-identifying? Now, what's the difference between a high school senior and a first-year college freshman? What's the difference?
3 months.
How long?
3 months.
3 months. Mm-hmm. That's the difference. So if high schools are now getting on board with all the terminology and teaching faculty and all faculty, what do colleges need to do? Same thing. Mm-hmm. All faculty, tenured or non-tenured, is irrelevant. Did I answer your question?
Thank you. Is there another question? And so while you think of your question, I have one for you. Is it important to have buy-in from all levels of the organization that you represent? And just to remind you, there's quite a few organizations represented here, not just Delaware Tech. But should we have buy-in at all levels?
I'll start off with that one. Absolutely, yes. And the reasons why vary. So at the very top, there's a saying that I heard one time from a senior leader: what you permit, you promote. So at senior leadership, the entire ship is looking at what you say yes to. The entire senior leadership, they are the ones that basically steer where the money goes. They're the ones that steer where the different initiatives go. So at the top of the chain, yes, you absolutely need senior leadership buy-in. But then that next level would be your middle managers, right? So whatever that looks like, however you translate that to your specific organizations. So here it might be your faculty. So you can have the president of Del Tech and the senior leadership of Del Tech all on board, but at the end of the day, it's going to be your faculty that creates that environment that your students were giving your assessment to. So if your faculty or in the industry world or in corporate world, if your middle managers don't buy into it, they're then not going to give space to your workforce, your students, to then engage with the different initiatives, to engage in being able to have that time and space to come to your events, to go to training, to do what, or to be the hands and feet. Because in most diversity and inclusion departments, areas, there's probably, you're greedy if you get more than 2 people. So it's myself and I have a specialist. And we are the organizational diversity and inclusion function. So we rely on the compassion, passion, commitment of others in the organization to go out and actually do the work. So we need, if we're going to have staff do the work, we need the middle managers to say it's okay to go, but then we need the senior leaders to also say it's okay.
It's very good. You said what you permit, you promote. That's a tweet right there. Hashtag DTCC Diversity. Did you guys want to add on?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because our structure within our organization, we have a flat organization. We don't have bosses. There are some leaders. So just the way, by nature of our structure, it's somewhat difficult to say it's going to be a top-down approach and who's doing what. But to Dana's point, you definitely have to have stakeholder buy-in, and you have to identify who the key stakeholders are. Some will be those that will, do the work with you. Some will introduce you to those that will do the work with you, and some are going to be resistors. And, the resistors are good because at least they're telling, in most cases, they're telling you that they're resisting. And you can create a strategy around, because in most cases, it's just that they're not aware, uninformed, or they feel threatened. But it gives you the opportunity to have conversation. And once you kind of convert, if you will, a resistor, they become one of your biggest advocates and allies. But you do have to understand who your stakeholders are. You have to answer the question for them, what's in it for them? You have to show what's the bottom line result. You have to shift the mindset of this diversity and inclusion work from being consumers to being producers. And what do I mean by that? Oftentimes, this work is about gimme, gimme, gimme. It appears that way. But what are you producing for the organization when you're looking at it from the standpoint of inclusion, bottom line results, better students, better faculty, more engagement, more contribution? Those are the results that you want to be able to share with those stakeholders that are bottom line oriented, right? If it's about, unfortunately, most organizations, about making some money, you have to show how inclusion is going to help organizations make more money. So you have to be very, very strategic about it and know who your allies are and help them tell the story for you. Because if not, they'll go out there and say anything, and then you're really in trouble. right? So those are some of the things that we do within our organization.
One of the things we did at the United Way back in 2015, we formed what we call the Delaware LGBT Health Equity Task Force, and trying to figure out how we could attack this disparities within the healthcare delivery system as respects the LGBT community. And ultimately, we decided the best thing we could probably do was to begin talking to hospitals here in Delaware, and we have 9 hospitals in Delaware, and see if we could convince them to begin participating in the Human Rights Campaign Healthcare Equality Index. And so along with Tim Rodden, one of Dana's co-workers at Christiana Care, and a few other volunteers, we went out and we met with senior leadership at all 9 hospitals. And meant driving from here to Lewis and over to Seaford, and fortunately there are several here in Newcastle County. And we sat down and we did exactly what Terence is referring to, is why should we do this? Because it will impact your bottom line in a positive way. If 13% of Delaware residents identify as LGBTQ or LGBT, that means that 13% of your patients, people who occupy your beds, should also be. That's what's in it for you. You need to be known as a gay-friendly hospital. And I'm so pleased to say that in 2016, 8 of the 9 hospitals were named leaders in healthcare equality by the Human Rights Campaign. But it takes work, it takes effort, it takes commitment. And I might add, before I forget, Nemours, our children's hospital, I received word last week that it looks like they will be opening a gender clinic in 2018. Much of that is thanks to what the Pride Council has been doing and along with the HRC. So I'm excited that our pediatric hospital is taking that next step to support transgender children and their families, children and young adolescents.
Thank you. Is there another question? Okay. It's okay. So while he walks over there, I just kind of want to piggyback with another question regarding, commitment at all levels of the organization. Should all organizations have a position that's dedicated to diversity and inclusion, or are there other ways to make it work?
I'll take that one. So when I started in my work with diversity and inclusion, I actually was on the HR recruiting team. And so we have this unique thing within our organizations where we say, we're going to give someone a 50% commitment doing this over here and a 50% commitment doing this over here. That's a setup for failure, right? Because trying to do 50% of 2 different things is really, really difficult. And to Dana's point, oftentimes you may have 1 or 2, maybe 3 people working in a diversity function. At Gore, we call ourselves the MacGyvers of the organization, because you have to use duct tape and scotch tape and glue and everything else to get things done. And organizations want great results with part-time employees. If an organization is really committed to D&I work, they're going to provide the resources needed, they're going to provide the money that's needed, and yes, it does take money. They're going to provide the structure that's needed, and they're going to provide the support that's needed. So to answer your question, yes, this should be a full-time position with full-time resources, with a full-time budget, and then you'll get incredible results.
The other piece I want to piggyback off of, we're piggybacking off of each other. And actually going back to what our keynote said earlier today, if you listen to all of the different pieces that she talked about, having a central function, again, it's not about having to have your hands on everything, but liking it to an air traffic controller. Yes, you can have a whole lot of pilots flying planes, but if you don't have that one person in the control booth saying, yo, you're going too high, you're going too low, go left, go right, you can have a lot of collisions. Mm-hmm. And then what happens is you either have people who are duplicating efforts, or because all of us tend to work from our own singular lens, right? So you could have, someone who, and this is a big pet peeve of mine, is when sometimes people get tagged to do diversity work because they are an aspect of diversity. So you become the Hispanic diversity person because you're Hispanic versus I'm doing diversity work because I'm knowledgeable about this and understanding what intersectionality means and how that plays out. Understanding when you talk about diversity, how do you get at, what Terence said about it can sometimes get diluted, right? So one of the things that I talk about a lot now and help people understand is the two dimensions of diversity. So there's complexity in that diversity work that you need someone who has a dedicated knowledge base around that. And then also you want someone who can then connect the dots to recognize, okay, you're over here doing this. How about we piggyback that off of the work that's going on over here so we can create synergy. So you can't do that if you've got a function over here, a function over there, a function over there. That to me can be, and I understand some organizations think that it's a way to embed it, where they want everyone to own it. But again, you end up having a whole bunch of little robots running around doing their own particular, what they care about work, versus having a dedicated source to be able to really line stuff up so that you get better synergy.
Thank you.
Janet said that the speakers went beyond her question. Oh, no, you got a question now? She's got a question. Somebody else please ask a question. I feel like we're reviewing for a test.
You answered it, Terence, but then I thought of something else. I think we talked about, and that's when Avi was speaking, and actually when they were talking about the survey, and I'm hoping this is okay to bring up right now, they talked about 54%, I believe, of students didn't really understand how to have the conversation or something after they left school. I'm not sure if I'm putting that correctly, but there was a question, something about if you can talk about ethnicity and inclusion and
Did you mean the comfort levels in having those conversations?
yeah, well, they were saying something about, I'm assuming they were saying, I guess after they left campus, they didn't talk about
Okay.
this type of, so I wanted to ask you all, how do we go about getting those students so we can have the conversations? And one of the things I was talking about as we were eating lunch is, I know we have the Downs Lecture Hall. I mean, why can't we have something where we just have a subject, that speaks to one of those subjects, and just have students come in and we discuss it, because you have to start somewhere. And I also was wondering, where do students play a role in what all three of you guys are doing? Where do we play a role in that also?
So I think the question that you were specifically talking about was the last one that was mentioned. Students who never, what was the percentage of students who never participated in racial or ethnic activities outside of the classroom? And that was the one that was 54%. As faculty, as professors, as teachers, give them assignments. Tell them, go to a different restaurant other than McDonald's. Tell them to go to it, and that's even stretching it for me, because I am very much a give me my meat, my potatoes, and I'm good. That's my comfort zone. But give them assignments that make them reach out. When I was learning and getting certified to do unconscious bias work, one of the things that the instructor gave us to do is watch a news program that's counter to your current beliefs. So if you are an MSNBC person, watch Fox. Listen to NPR. Give them things that will stretch them beyond their comfort zone that doesn't take place necessarily on campus. Because the way I understood this was, okay, we have this event, so students will come to this event and they'll get to interact with difference here. But once they leave the campus, then they go back to their norm. So how do you, ask them questions around, there's a series of questions that, and if you Google it, my daughter has taught me now the power of Google. But if you go out on Google, there are like questions that you can ask in terms of how diverse is your network. So how many times does someone from a different background, whatever that background might be, come to your house for dinner? How often, what's the diversity of your neighborhood? How can you then, maybe it's pairing them up with someone to say, you know, I'm a big movie person, so how many people remember Denzel, Remember the Titans? Mm-hmm. Right? Look, back in the back of the room, I got two hands up, okay. Back of the Titans. That was a classic example of reaching beyond your normal, right? So you had the two football players. Neither one of them had ever stepped outside of their universe. The only diversity that they ever interacted with was on that football team. Once they started stretching beyond that is when they started to build that fellowship and really build that community. So as professors, you can absolutely influence that by giving them work outside of the classroom to stretch those boundaries. I missed my cue, I'm sorry.
Nope. We have our
If I could sort of add on, this has been in the back of my mind all morning. Most of the presentation has been around race and ethnicity. You've always got to include sexual orientation. You always have to include sexual orientation. If Deltec is committed to diversity and inclusion, that rainbow flag, that gay couple, has to be on every piece of marketing material. Otherwise, you're not committed. And don't think you are. Now, it's awfully hard. You can count how many women you have, or men. You can count how many African Americans by looking at them, generally speaking, or Latinos. You can't count how many gays and lesbians. It is impossible, because I'm not going to tell you unless I trust you. But you, as an organization, can become gay-friendly by doing simple things. Safe space, the gay flag, is what it's all about.
And I would even push beyond that. And this gets back to what I say around our definition of diversity tends to be our lens. I would also say it's more than just race, ethnicity. It is also physical ability, cognitive ability. We can go down the list, right? And that's where people get scared, because when you start to go through all of the different lenses of diversity, and when we talk about truly having that culture of inclusion, it's every single one. I remember fighting one time with an administrator, not when I was at Christiana Care, but at another facility, when we were doing our online learning. We had a staff member who needed the online learning to be formatted a certain way so that his JAWS reader, which is an apparatus for someone with a visual disability they use to read computer screens. And I remember someone saying to me, well, how many people is it if it's only one or two? And I was like, I don't care how many people it is. Mm-hmm. That's still one person that has every right to be included and be able to have the same experience that everyone else has. So when you talk about, how do we create this inclusive environment, we've got to be really cognitive of what are the gaps, all of the gaps, be it gender, be it race, because for some places, it's not going to be race, ethnicity. Mm-hmm. It just absolutely won't be that gap. That gap might be physical ability, cognitive ability. That gap might be geographics. When I first started working at Delaware, I tell people all the time, the biggest cultural shift that I had to make was the difference of what does it look like and how I can have certain conversations living in Philly versus what it looks like having conversations in Delaware. Because it's very different. I tell people all the time, I get the Delaware yes all the time. Whereas in Philly, they'll tell you right to your face, no. No, I'm not doing it. And to Terence's point, you then know what to work from. Mm-hmm. But you have to know what is the culture in your organization and recognize and reach out to. So, when you talk about your marketing materials, when you look at your marketing materials, what's in there? Do you have your older students in there? Are they represented? Do you have your pregnant moms in there? Do you have a picture of a guy with a baby in the backpack carrying them to class? It's all of those creative ways that you've got to reach out to everyone. Do you have that same-sex couple sitting on the lawn together, studying? It's all of it. You can't just focus on one or the other, because you tend to germinate and tend to go towards those that you are comfortable with, familiar with, and then you, by default, you're excluding the ones that you might not be so comfortable with. And then you get caught up in that.
You felt my eye, didn't you? Thank you, Dana. She did say, you know, I'm just going to let you know ahead of time, Nat, I'm very passionate about this, and that's why we invited you and the three of you. We have time for one more question.
Oh, got a question.
Oh. Okay.
I have a question. Ms. Johnson-Farrell mentioned the Common Ground event briefly at the end, and I was curious about movements with this idea in mind, because when I think of diversity, it's great to honor everyone's differences, but I think something that we don't often do is drawing attention to the sameness. And so how can we cut through that habit of identifying people as other and creating more kind of safe, inclusive environments in that way, instead of just focusing on the differences?
Well, I'll sort of try to attack it a little bit. And actually, there are two teachers here who could probably answer that question better than I, because they're both faculty advisors for a GSA in Kent, Sussex County. I think it really starts with teachers in schools, and we need to develop this inclusive thought process from a very early age. The Human Rights Campaign has a program called Welcoming Schools, and it's designed for elementary schools. And every elementary school principal, counselor ought to read that Welcoming Schools program and implement it. Because that's where it starts. You know, I can't do much for a 60-year-old white man who has lived a privileged life. I can do something with his kindergarten child. That's where it starts to me. And we build on it. We build on it then in middle schools. We have the Safe Space program, which is put out by Gleason. We build on it by having gay-straight alliances or whatever it is to support kids. I think that's where it begins. It begins in schools, and then it comes to Del Tech or UD or whatever the university is. You've got to be committed to supporting those kids. And one of the things I always ask when I'm doing the ABCs to a faculty group is, how many of you have a friend or family member who is part of the LGBT community? A little more than half of the hands. When I first started to ask that question 5 years ago, about 3 or 4 sheepish hands would go up. Now I'm getting 60, 70, 80%. That's what it takes. Consistent, persistent.
I want to zero in on something that I heard you say. And I think this has been a conundrum in the D&I space forever. It's that idea and mindset that when we talk about difference, and you alluded to this in your slide, when the slide was shown with the word cloud, and it was asked, what don't you see? There was nothing negative, right? So I think we have this mindset around, if I call out the fact that I am a mother, 53-year-old, married, African-American female from Philadelphia. That's who I am. It's not to say that I want anything more for any of those. What I'm saying is, and when we talk about the D&I space and the inclusion spaces, I'm saying be able to appreciate me for being a 53-year-old mother, African-American, married female. How many of you are TV watchers? How many of you watch This Is Us? For those of you that don't, shame on you, you need to watch it. That's the best show ever. Best show ever.
You have a big fan in the back over there.
There's diversity in this room. But where we find common ground is, so for example, pretend like almost everybody raised their hand for This Is Us. Again, on demand, get on it. Say the majority of people here watched This Is Us. When I watch This Is Us, I'm watching it from a lens of Kate, the middle sister. This time last year, I was 125 pounds heavier. So I'm into Kate's story. Kate is a white woman that that's the similarity that I have with her. So we have difference, but we have that similarity that I can vibe with her. I can vibe with Randall because Randall is an African-American male. So we have that African-American experience that we have in common. I can vibe with Kevin because I used to want to be the next Whoopi Goldberg. Can you tell that's why I talk so much? So each one of them, in their own diversity, I find something that I connect with them each on. So it's not about focusing on the difference. It's about appreciating the difference for what it is and what it brings to the table and leveraging that, because if I'm leveraging the difference that you bring, whatever your experience, your world experience, worldview is, you are going to help me see something differently than if I just leveraged this young woman, this person right here, who visually we might have a lot in common with, right? That's how it's not to take away the focus on the difference, it's to appreciate the difference for what it adds to the full pot of everything that we have going on, our lived experience. So when you think about it, shift it just a little bit from focusing on difference, change the language, because language is so important in how we speak to certain things. Focus more on how do we leverage the differences, because that way it's getting away from the us, them, and it's more, how can I learn from you what I don't already have?
Thank you so much. She keeps apologizing, but I say thank you. We all say thank you to all three of them, right? Thank you so much for being here. That was excellent. This Is Us is a fantastic show. So we're going to quiz you all next year to make sure you're caught up on your episodes. Thank you again. At this time, we're going to take a short break, and we will see you shortly.